relevant to consumers currently, says Iso Cowpillar. People are excited about mushroom coffee because it's a better-for-you coffee experience that is not acidic and doesn't give you the jitters that normal coffee does but still has this energizing effect. Is mushroom power real? While medicinal mushrooms are being peddled by the likes of Gwyneth Paltrow, she prefers them with her morning smoothie. The scientific community still has qualms about their efficacy. Four Sigmatic ground coffee. Photo, courtesy of Four Sigmatic. Nicholas P. Money, a professor of botany at Miami University, says that while medicinal mushrooms contain an array of chemical compounds that may have useful pharmacological properties, overall, we should be very wary when we read about the seemingly miraculous properties of lychee, lion's mane, turkey tail, chaga, and other fungi. The medical community needs more clinical trials, Money stresses, to better assess mushrooms' true efficacy when it comes to preventing or treating illnesses. The claims made by the medicinal mushroom industry should be treated with great skepticism, Money warns. And since medicinal mushrooms are relatively new to the U.S. palate, most stateside nutritionists learned little about them during their training. Nutritionist Christine M. Palumbo is on the nominating committee of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, yet she says that mushrooms, which are indeed chock full of vitamin D, were one of a few foods that didn't get much attention during her education. Mushrooms were described as being something to add texture and flavor but otherwise were just there, she recalls. Still, Palumbo recognizes that mushrooms have been prized by many for thousands of years for seeming to have antibiotic and anti-inflammatory properties, and is noticing that they are gaining more attention in medical circles. Palumbo sees the new wave of medicinal mushroom products particularly resonating with people who have resources, i.e., money to spend, as well as individuals in their 60s who have a bit more time to experiment with their diet and, well, want to stave off the Grim Reaper. Paul Stamets, a leading mycologist and the invention ambassador of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, clarifies that medicinal mushrooms support immunity but do not necessarily prevent, cure, or treat any disease complex. It's an important distinction, he explains, and one that he clarifies for his brand Fungi Perfect Tea, which sells over 200 medicinal mushrooms products, such as capsules and extracts, in over 30,000 stores. It boasts 70% of the market share, and in the last year, experienced double-digit growth. Stamets is adamant that with more trials currently being conducted, the greater public will eventually discover antioxidant powers of the mushroom. In fact, he is planning a clinical study on lion's mane to further investigate its alleged ability to regenerate neurons and affect neuropathy. It's one of our rising stars right now, he says of that particular mushroom. We're all getting older, we all face potential dementia and other neuropathy. So this is something that we're very much focused on, these foods being beneficial. Lifehouse Tonics Black Fruit Blended Tonic. Photo, courtesy of Lifehouse Tonics, a complicated fungi. So how far can mushrooms go in this new age of niche health trends? Can it be the next killer, the new kombucha? Mushrooms will likely experience further growth, explains Lattner, but it has a few glaring hurdles to overcome. For one, taste. Lifehouse Tonics, along with other brands, spends a large amount of time formulating products to mask mushrooms' mud-like flavors. Oftentimes, it's with the help of chocolate chips. There's also the barrier of prep. One cannot simply eat these mushrooms raw. They must be dual extracted and heated for oral consumption. I think that there's going to be a continued stigma against medicinal mushrooms down the road because you can't just take medicinal mushroom and sauté them with onions and garlic to make a risotto, says Lattner. Stamets also brings up the prickly issue of origins, in that many brands fail to disclose where they source their mushrooms from. Many import their produce from China, which Stamets find troublesome thanks to that country's pollution issues and rampant pesticide residues. That's why Fungi Perfect Tea only sources mushrooms from the United States. You should be very concerned about the origin of species that are being grown, warns Stamets. Mushrooms are a reflection of the environment of which they're grown. Several mushroom hawking competitors, meanwhile, advocate the complete opposite practice, only buying Chinese ingredients. And some medicinal mushroom extracts are not organic or even composed of pure mushrooms, but a mix of powders or mycelium. The disarray of information makes for a confusing consumer experience. Without mainstream medical outlets setting certain parameters, one might want to not even take a chance on these types of mushrooms. Whole Foods Global Quality Standards Coordinator Jody Vallejo reports that the retailer inspects ingredients of all medicinal mushroom products, namely coffees, tonics, skincare products, and broths, and requests related studies. We have to make sure all the ingredients meet our standards, says Villeco. Then we take a very careful look at labeling, specifically health claims. There's also environmental concern over mushroom foraging practices. Chaga, a supposedly immune-boosting mushroom, is generally not sustainably harvested, says Stamets. The variety occurs in 1 out of every 10,000 birch trees and one must use a machete or a hatchet to gather it. The foragers have cut off parts of the tree, leaving a giant wound in the tree, explains Stamets, and then the tree can potentially die. Room for shroom growth for medicinal mushroom entrepreneurs. Education is key. Companies are leading the way in teaching consumers not only about why they claim mushrooms can possibly benefit their health, but also how to best use and consume them. Four Sigmatic, for example, has an email list of a few 100,000 and moderates a robust Facebook group where over 10,000 members share tips and information about how to utilize fungi for energy, menstrual cramps, and even pet pain. Iso Cowpillar says social media has been a key driving force in raising mushroom awareness. Niche categories can now find an e-commerce audience that wasn't attainable when he first started out 12 years ago. Back then, the industry was dominated by large food companies, says Iso Cowpillar. I saw how the blogosphere was educating people and health communities were sprouting up online. Companies started to be built from a more online-heavy presence versus immediately going to retail. Wellness sites such as Well Good and MindBody Green have also helped educate readers on mushrooms' hidden talents. Stamets, for his part, has become a mushroom celebrity of sorts within certain tech and digital communities. Podcast host Joe Rogan, who hosted The Mycologist on his program this past fall, said Stamets was the most requested guest by the show's fans. Stamets' TED Talk on the power of mushrooms has been viewed nearly 5 million times, while the producers of Star Trek Discovery were so entranced by Stamets' work that they introduced a mycologist character bearing his name. Photo, courtesy of Four Sigmatic. If anything, it seems that medicinal mushrooms are spreading beyond the smaller health circles of Los Angeles and New York. Iso Cowpillar says many of his customers hail from the Midwest, Northeast, and Florida. Mostly, these consumers are millennials or baby boomers and, of course, biohackers. All this interest is giving mushrooms startups confidence to try growing in their businesses in new markets. Following their success in Los Angeles, Lifehouse Tonics intends to open more stores in cities like Chicago and Miami, while also expanding its product collection online. Moon Juice, meanwhile, will also open more storefronts and sell its $38 jars of adaptogenic blends at beauty behemoth Sephora and a few hotel lobby bars. We are still very much in the early days, says Iso Cowpillar, who will reveal several new coffee products in the coming year. But globally, there's been a huge change. Right now we're just scratching the surface, but seeing as Starbucks recently announced a fellow adaptogen turmeric into its lattes, it won't be all that surprising to see more mainstream retailers dip into Eastern-inspired ingredients. 10 years ago people like my dad would never drink green juice, says Latner, expounding on the healthy beverage trend. But now, he does. The market has changed.